starting? Is it not changing anything at all? So I wanna wait for some of those results to come back.
So you like to see a pilot program done, so get some.
Yeah, I mean, their whole push on that is that that's the cause of academic delay. They're blaming the technology and the cell phone, right? That high schoolers are falling behind because of cell phone use. So I wanna see some data on that.
In as a parent, I'll just say that in the high school, at least, the children or the young people are not, they used to heavily rely on their phones for curriculum, and now they make them put it away. So, I think that's good.
Yeah.
So they still have access to it, like if they're, at lunchtime or something like that, but they're not utilizing it for curriculum anymore at all, like they were 2 years ago.
So high school is a little bit different.
Yes. So I think it's good.
So,
I had thought it was not permitted in the high school, except that I keep getting phone calls from high schoolers and the other day, and I'm going, how are you calling me? Oh, it's okay, my teacher said it's okay.
They're not allowed to have them,
Yeah.
but they got my son's a freshman, and he keeps his little clear bag, supposed to be turned off. But like in between classes and stuff, if I need to reach him or whatever, I can send a message, call me or whatever, he'll call. But if they get caught with them, they go to the principal's office, because I've already had to go pick one up. And that's just, I believe it's a state law too,
yes, they just implemented that.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Yes,
So maybe I missed this part of it, but could you introduce yourself and tell us your
yes.
background?
I know, we just
And
got,
tell
and
me
I was
why-
like,
why
where are
are
my
you-
5 minutes of, yeah.
Why are you uniquely qualified?
Absolutely. Well, my name is Nabila Kovac, and I have 5 children. 3 of them are in Union County schools right now. So I have a 7th grader, a 3rd grader, and a 5th grader. We've been here since our oldest was in pre-K, so the Union County schools is all they've ever known. And a little bit of backstory, we moved here after my husband got out of his 2nd deployment, and we were ready to say goodbye to the military life. So before that, we were all over Macon, Georgia. We were in Woodstock, Georgia, all over the place. So he came up here for a work-related thing and just fell in love with the mountains. And I came up here and I was like, hey, there's a Chick-fil-A.
We're good.
There's a Chick-fil-A, there's Home Depot. Okay, I think I can manage. It's not that remote where you can't do anything. So honestly, we've been in love with this place. We cannot imagine raising our children anywhere else. And for the most part, I've enjoyed the school system. We have some amazing teachers and staff that work very hard. But about two years ago, I did have a personal situation with the school system, which kind of started my discovery into how we operate. I started ending board meetings pretty regularly, started interacting with board members, asking questions, reading policies, stuff like that. And what I found was we really have, I hope it's safe to say, more like a cult-like situation where everybody's kind of like, they're not willing to listen to the community input. Board meetings are very, very strict and structured. Most of the time they just kind of stare through your soul and don't really even answer your questions unless you know somebody, So if I know of somebody who I can contact, they know the board member, then you might get a response back. So I believe elected officials should be available to everyone across the community, whether they voted for you or not. And that's one of the things I hope to change is you don't need to come tell me you voted for me or not. I'm here to serve, and I'm here to serve the entire county. So that's that. As far as my educational background, I have a bachelor's degree in accounting. I'm currently earning my JM from Florida State University. Hope to go for my doctorate after that, but I have experience in banking and human resources, and I just moved into compliance, so I do policy writing and review for colleges.
How old are your oldest?
13. But she's a really good 13-year-old. I can't say the same for my second, but she's like the model child, the model oldest child. Groomed, homework done, straight A's. The best compliments I get.
You got lucky.
I got lucky. But my second I'm really scared of, and I'm scared of one of my twins.
That's just 4.
Yeah.
What about the 5th?
The third that forgets, the middle child that we all tend to forget, she's very young, she's very quiet and introverted child. She only really talks to me. but she's a quiet person and still learning to be herself a little bit. And yes, she does get lost being a middle child sometimes.
I'm a middle child, so I can relate.
I feel,
Which is
I
why
will
she
connect
asked.
you to Mila if you both wanna hang out sometimes.
And then we have Miss Elise, she's running for Superior Court Judge.
My name's Elise, give my
Yes,
introduction.
of course.
My name's Elise Foyle, and I'm running for Superior Court Judge, and that's for Union, Towns, White, and Lumpkin counties. And I live in Lumpkin County in Dahlonega, and I also, my husband and I have an office on the square in Dahlonega, this is my husband Matthew Foyle. And we have our office on the square in Dahlonega, and practice quite a broad array of law between the two of us, and we also have another attorney that works for us as well. I started out in our circuit and primarily have worked in our circuit, and especially a lot in Superior Court since I began practicing law in 2017. I started out as a public defender for the Unota Circuit. I was based in the White County Courthouse in that role, and public defender is an attorney that gets appointed to criminal defendants that are indigent and cannot afford an attorney. So that was my first experience in the legal field. And then my husband and I started our practice in Dahlonega in 2018, and so I started in private practice then. Started in primarily family law, continued with a lot of criminal defense work, have practiced in areas of property law, civil litigation, which is a very broad category that encompasses a lot of areas of law. And I have done a lot of work with domestic violence nonprofits, assisting victims, survivors of domestic violence through all types of legal issues, primarily protective order cases, but a lot of that ties into criminal and civil law as well. So I've found that having a broad array of experience in our courts and in the different areas of law has helped tremendously, especially in our private practice. In 2022, I was on my way home from court in Blairsville, about 5 minutes out from the courthouse. I was T-boned by a young man, full speed ahead, almost died, and thankfully I'm here 4 years later. And that was personally and professionally life-altering experience. And I gained so much more perspective. I think that's a big factor that I believe makes me the most qualified to be our Superior Court Judge, is my broad experience and perspective that I have throughout my life and practice. And throughout that time, I was in the hospital for 23 days, and I did not return to court. That happened in February. I was not able to return to court and kind of fully get back into practice until October. And during that extensive time, months of physical therapy, recovery, our circuit and our communities in the 4 counties were so extremely supportive and helpful, and reminded me of how grateful I am to live here and to have worked here my entire career. And that certainly shaped the trajectory of where I am now in my career and where I want to continue to move towards, which is service. I'm not looking to fill a seat just because it's open. Judge Raymond George's seat is the position that I'm running for, and my understanding is that he'll finish out this term, so the end of this year, and whoever is elected to take his position would start January 1st of 2027. And so I'm very grateful and honored to have the opportunity that I was not able to do 4 years ago this time, and continue the utmost level of service in our legal system for the communities that have been there for me so much and that I want to continue to serve, and especially in the wide range of areas of law that are handled in Superior Court. In Superior Court, you can have anything from a traffic citation that maybe started out in city court for speeding, and that can end up in Superior Court. All types of family law, so anything from divorce, custody disputes, adoptions. I've done a couple of those as well. Property disputes, anything civil litigation, again, which is a very broad area. So for example, we had a case that we worked on together that was business partners that were no longer working together and sued each other, and that went to a jury trial, so that's handled in Superior Court. I've had all types of experience before our judges, especially being in the public defender's office, and then I also was offered a position, our district attorney, to work in the district attorney's office, and I started that position in 2023, not long after I was back to work from surviving the car crash, and then ultimately went back into private practice, and continue to enjoy every aspect of that, and every level of service that I'm able to do for our community in all the different areas of law. And so I think I ultimately bring the widest range of experience and practice, and have spent my entire career in Superior Court, and hope to continue to be able to do so and preside and serve our community and be fair, impartial, and know what it's like from the other side of the bench and the perspectives of everyone that are involved and come to court. I think that's extremely important, is to understanding that perspective, all of the different perspectives. And I myself, as a crime victim, know what it's like to feel how overwhelming and intimidating the courtroom can be, even when you're not on trial or there for, fighting a case as an attorney or as a party. And so the importance of being treated with respect and dignity by the judge. I've had experience, of course, as an attorney with that happening, but as a crime victim, that's when I really felt how important and realized how important it is for the judge to preside over everyone's role in the courtroom with that level of respect and dignity, which is difficult because I had never been in the same room as the young man that hit me, and I'm strong, I'm an attorney, I'm in a courtroom, this is my, comfort zone, so to speak, but the feeling that took over when a criminal defendant came in the room and knowing the impact that it had on our lives and being able to tell my story to the court and know that they were listening and hearing how that impacted the court's decision for that young man's life, after how I almost lost my own. So that's been my experience in a nutshell. Thank you so much for having me here tonight and giving me the opportunity to speak with you all. Yes, sir.
What is the judge's function in plea bargaining?
Okay, plea bargaining. I have some ideas about what plea bargaining is, and I can
In other words,
elaborate.
settling the case with
Right. Right.
going up or down with the defendant.
The sentencing aspect.
What's the judge's function in that?
So from my experience from both sides in representing the criminal defendant and prosecuting, that's really where the most important parts of the negotiation process and the plea negotiations occur between the defense attorney and the prosecutor. And obviously they have to work together to reach a resolution that both deem appropriate as far as settling a case in that manner, a criminal case, when someone chooses to plead guilty. And ultimately when that's presented to the court, it's explained, not every time. There are times when it's a negotiated plea, and there's also something called an open plea, which is where it's very, it could be very risky for the defendant because you're essentially opening up your sentence to the judge to make the final decision within the confines of what the law states for sentencing guidelines. But obviously taking everything into consideration, such as criminal history, are they a contributing member of society? Are there any underlying substance abuse issues, mental health issues? Taking the entirety of this person that's entering a plea rather than going to trial, which is everyone's ultimate right, especially in Superior Court, is to have a jury trial. So the judge has the final say, regardless of whether it's presented as a negotiated plea or as an open plea. And there's a standard form in our circuit that's a plea petition. It's close to about 40 questions that you have to go over, the attorney goes over with the defendant, and then the judge ultimately reviews in going through the plea hearing process. And a few of those questions that the defendant has to answer, both in the paperwork and when addressed by the judge, you understand that the sentence you receive is ultimately up to the judge, no matter what's been negotiated, no matter what. And that means they're following the laws as far as the sentencing guidelines go. So there's only so much, time someone can be sentenced to jail, or so much fines that can be imposed and things like that. Is that what you were asking?
I wanna make sure you can reject the deal.
Oh, well, I mean, the judge has the final say. So, and that does happen if it's presented as, hey, judge, criminal defense attorney, prosecutor, we've got this worked out, here's what we've got. If the judge is like, yeah, no deal or no deal, then that's the judge's decision, and the person, the criminal defendant, knows that and is advised of that, and again, reminded of that when the judge is going through what's called the colloquy and going through their rights and all of the constitutional rights that they're waiving by entering a plea. So if the judge deems that the terms that have been agreed to are not suitable under, again, the circumstances that are all presented, then of course the judge can say, no, that's not what we're gonna do.
I know that as a candidate and for a judge position, you cannot state opinions on certain type of things. How do you feel about releasing repeat offenders on an easy out?
I will speak from my personal experience that I mentioned about being a crime victim and again, being part of what was presented to the judge, which was a negotiated plea. But my position and how it affected me was heard and taken into consideration before the judge ultimately delivered the person's sentence. I felt that it was very fair under the circumstances. However, that young man spent a little time in prison, and not long after he got out, he got a DUI and wasn't even supposed to be driving based on the sentence that I heard and knew that he was under. So I think I explained in my kind of plea scenario that I think it's so important. I know it's important to take, again, the criminal history, the background, if they've had violations multiple times, that has to all be taken into consideration when sentencing a defendant. So I've seen how that can be very troublesome and it's hurtful personally when that happens. So, but I have to put, and I know that, personal opinions aside, because you have to take all of the information that's presented to you and apply the law accordingly.
You got two different positions that's up for election.
Yes.
One is George and designated George, the other is designated Blevins.
Yes.
What's the difference between the two?
The difference between Judge George and Judge Levins? There's a lot of differences.
No, between the positions.
Oh,
Positions.
I'm sorry.
No,
I thought
the
you were like,
positions
there's a
of
lot of.
those two.
Not the people.
Oh, okay. So Judge George, and if I don't answer this, tell me so I can elaborate more. Judge George
going to
Yeah.
continue presiding. So it's not a contested incumbent. So when you see it on the ballot, there's no
Yeah.
I in Judge George's position. Judge Levens is the incumbent. He was appointed in 2020. So I don't think he has ever run as a candidate.
No, I think he needs a difference
Yeah.
in
In the
court
responsibility.
system.
Responsibility.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Counties that cover responsibilities that this one does, what's the responsibility of that one?
So
How are they
A lot of-
different, how are they the
A lot of
same?
people are confusing your race with that race.
Yeah.
They're-
Yeah.
Okay,
So
okay, I see.
people wanna understand the difference between the courts.
Yeah.
Okay, so well, and there's 3 Superior Court judges in our circuit, but just 2 out of the 3 are on this ballot. Judge Levens and Judge George both all preside and are on schedules to be in all 4 counties throughout, I think, each week. So it's presiding in all 4 counties, based on their schedules. I know Judge George is in charge of and presides over the drug court, which is one of the big accountability courts. And Judge Levens is over the parental accountability court. So those are the 2 accountability courts that each of those specific judges presides over. And Judge Levens' position, he has, there's another candidate running for that position as well.
Yeah, but I just want, like you said, one of them's, accountability for this and then,
Yes.
I just wanted to know the difference between the two.
Between the 2 accountability courts?
And
And then the
Oh,
third
oh.
one, what's the other one, the third judge cover?
Judge Parks, she's our chief judge of the circuit, and she covers the mental health court. So there's mental health, criminal accountability, and drug court.
And
okay,
there's
that
also
helps.
regular court, right?
Oh, yeah, that
Yeah,
too,
you
yeah,
used to have those 3
that too,
accountability
yeah,
courts.
right, so then each of the 3 judges are tasked with being presiding judge over the different accountability courts, in addition to regular schedules spread throughout the court.
Besides the accountability, is the 3 judges, whichever one's available goes?
Last names of, oh, is that the case assignment? So, yeah, so if you file a lawsuit against Joe Smith, so whichever judge out of the 3, and they rotate it every so often.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at,
Whichever
yeah.
out of the 3 judges, and there's a chart, and so there's RG, BL, and JP, the judge's initials.
Yeah.
And then there's dots out, and it's A, B, C, D, E, all through Z. So it's whatever the first letter of your last name, and whichever judge is assigned to that letter.
Okay,
That's how the cases are assigned.
so that, certain ones got certain accountability,
I
but
didn't
they
find out it was
also,
that simple.
It's the first letter of your last name.
but they also could fill it, not fill, that's the wrong word, but any of them can be assigned to any case. But according to that
Regular
schedule,
court.
in regular court,
Right.
yeah,
And
okay,
that's how,
Okay.
all of the different judges get assigned their cases, first letter of your last name.
How does juvenile court fall into all of this?
Juvenile court, as far as into Superior Court, they're separate and distinct from Superior Court. Now, a juvenile court judge for our circuit is appointed by the Superior Court judges. I think it has to be unanimous appointment through the Superior Court judges, but juvenile court, is separate and distinct and has its own code. Obviously, because it applies to youth, and so different scheduling, different laws that apply throughout the process and pendency of the various juvenile court cases, and a lot more than just one attorney on each side. There's a lot more actors, more people involved in the juvenile court and how that is run.
I'm curious on what your position is. So I work with the vulnerable people in the community, domestic violence, substance abuse, and I have found that our district is extremely abstinent. That's the philosophy. And I think some of this is pretty relevant when you look at the level of drug arrest just for Blairsville on a weekly basis, and we have 1 participant in drug court that just graduated, and even across the Lognaga and everything, the participation rate is exceptionally low versus the arrests that are being made. So I'm curious, do you have any different ideology to bring into that to kind of maybe open up a little bit to some of the mandates to get people in? Because I feel like there are other options in the community that can be available especially who are dealing with substance abuse
Absolutely.
that are not being tapped.
Yeah, so, are y'all familiar with, like, that there's a screening process for someone to even qualify for drug court in the different accountability courts? Yeah, so, from my experience, and especially with, defending a lot of cases and clients, sometimes it's, oh, this is your first drug charge ever, but the prosecution is wanting you to apply for and go through the drug court. So I'm thinking on the front end, the screening process and the interviews and how they're selected, could probably be improved. I know we have an excellent drug court though in our circuit. And exploring and being very aware and providing information, especially whether it's in the public defender's office, because they do handle the majority of the criminal cases in our circuit, and private defense attorneys as well, to know all of the resources that are available throughout our 4 counties, so that if someone either doesn't qualify for drug court, or, it's something that needs to be addressed, early on, as, let's say it's a first charge, and it's like, no, maybe you don't need to be in drug court for 2 years, and it's a misdemeanor charge then. But here are all of the other resources that are available to you, and make sure that drug court is specifically for, and it usually is for the more serious felony cases. But I know they also have exclusion, criteria. So if someone, I think, has been charged with selling or doing different types of crimes, then they exclude people sometimes from drug court, where I found, again, from representing all of these people, that oftentimes people might be selling drugs because they have an addiction, but because they're charged with, and that's what is on paper, they're charged with selling or manufacturing, to support their own addiction, which is what drug court is meant to help and to treat and to prevent repeat offenders. So that as well as part of the selection process is maybe screening and making sure that we're getting to the true core.
Do you have purview over that?
In my position now?
As a superior, would that be your purview?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Judge George is who presides over the drug court, so yes.
We will talk after.
Okay, yeah, no, I love it, because
Can I
having,
ask a real question?
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, Robin. If President Trump does away with the, Department of Education, if you're elected, would you be willing to push saying, okay, let's do things differently for our county because we don't have all these federal mandates?
Absolutely. I'm supportive of that whole from the very beginning, because I do believe Department of Education is just not functioning the way it was intended 2 years ago. And, we elect our local officials, we listen to our local communities, and that's where the input should be coming from. I think the more limited federal government, the better.
Right.
In your research, getting into this, what should be the ratio between expenditures on academics versus expenditures on all the other things that the school system is trying to take responsibility for?
So I heavily discussed that on my campaign page. Like, I didn't really break down numbers, but I do know not everybody is on social media and stuff like that. But I do believe that the majority of the funds need to go straight to academics. The function of a public education is to educate. We want to make sure that we put academics at the center of everything. Because it doesn't matter where our kids go, they take math with them, they take literature with them, they take reading and writing with them. You may play, now I'm a fully supportive of sports. Don't take me the wrong way, I think sports are very important for character development. Most of the CEOs I researched the other day played sports through their life at some point or another. But we need to keep in mind that at the core function of a public school system is education. So I would, that's where my focus is. Let's bring it back to the basics. I mean, we have pretty embarrassing scores. Statewide, nationwide. If you compare US to other countries, compare us to Japan. it's pretty bad. And then you compare us, we're 38 in the nation. Georgia is number 38, academically.
But they're happy about that,
Um,
or the school board is.
I'm not gonna speak on that, they can speak for themselves, but what I can say is I'm running because I have 5 children, my children will attend Union County Schools until 2040. That's a long time to go, and I want them to leave with the best education that they can get. And hopefully one day my grandchildren, so we need to make sure our public schools and public institutions are, providing what they're intended for. Again, like we're paying what, 60 million plus every year to Union County Schools. That's a lot of money. That's a very wealthy school system. So our graduation rates can be 95, 98%, but if our proficiency rates are 40 to 50%, make that comparison for me. It doesn't make sense.
What can the school board do to help encourage trade school education?
I believe they do some of that. I've been pretty pleasant with some of the partnerships that Union County Schools has had in the community, and I do believe that we can probably expand upon that, especially taking advantage of our seniors. We have a very heavy retired community. We have people from military background, we have nurses, we have retired teachers, engineers, you name it, like our community is filled with those people. My daughter took sewing lessons last summer at the 4-H office, and she's been asking me for sewing lessons, but I have 5 children, and twins really keep me busy for the last couple of years. I didn't sign up to have twins, I signed up to have one. And it was so wonderful. It was just a room full of, ladies who brought their own quilts, and they provided the sewing machines, and they brought them a pillow that I couldn't sew. So kind of like that, I do believe that we can absolutely implement some of those partnerships across with businesses and with our community members and our seniors that help children learn basic life skills in various different ways that they need.
How do you feel about Blairsville? It's still a farming community, but there are not that many kids that are living on farms anymore. Going to a 12-month school year.
12-month school year?
Yeah, where they get 2 weeks off every quarter or every semester.
Oh, that would take a whole system to change. It's not something at this point I will support on the board, to be fair with you. I don't like making promises that I can't.
Yeah.
So I believe that whenever we implement a drastic change, such as a 4-day school week or a 4-day work week, our economy, our systems, our employers is not set up to really support those. But when those functions come and there's a realistic plan, I can look at it, just like any other plan, honestly. I'm open to looking at things and making an informed decision. I would love a 4-day work week. We can all go to 4-day work week and 4-day school week.
Can I ask another question real quick? Is the old elementary school, does the school board or the school system still own it and is renting it out? Or what's happening with that?
I'll tell you my understanding. I'm not on the board yet. So I'll share with you what I understand, and if I'm wrong, I'll be corrected pretty quickly. My understanding is that Union County Schools still owns the building. The old elementary school now houses the AEP program. The AEP building was demolished, and they are building some sports-related fields there. And the Head Start, my twins start Head Start. Head Start the building is provided by Union County Schools, even though Head Start is a separate entity.
And are they collecting rent, or are we being really, really high taxpayers?
So Head Start runs on very limited federal funds, and I've asked this directly from the person who's in charge, and I believe there's some federal funding maybe, or maybe it's community. I don't want to speak on it too much. Again, I'm not in charge of those things, but I believe there's some kind of understanding that you can use our building to do this Head Start function. Head Start is now moving to the primary school because they're I believe demolishing that building as well.
Would you be for putting the superintendent on a ballot for us to vote on every 4 years?
Absolutely, I think community should have input on any key positions. That's a whole process you have to go through.
You can. You can.
There's a process to go through, yeah, because most of,
Yeah.
and you have to have a support of a legislator, and again, you can do it, it's a process.
And then you get into, and I've seen it in training things, where it's a popularity contest, you know, and you have people, well, I'm gonna run this time for superintendent, and when I retire, then and then this principal goes to this school. Of course, I know that happens in Union as well.
Yeah, exactly.
But I've seen that in the election for school
So there
superintendent.
are pros and cons to it, that's, as a community, you have to look at both. There is a reason those counties went to this ward function and an appointment superintendent as opposed to ward appointment. So you have to look at is what do we want as a community, and then decide, but it can be done.
Right now, our board works for John Hill instead of John Hill working for the board. And so, even the new ones coming in that's unopposed, from being at the school board meeting last week, they was all up in arms with John Hill's brother, which is the biggest bully of all. We're trying to run people out from running for elections. So, unless we stand up to make a change, there's not gonna be no change. And my goal in the next 10 years, hopefully some of that, is to either get the superintendent on the ballot or trying to get every board member in there out before their time's up. Because it's so corrupt in there, and we're paying for it. We're paying for it as taxpayers. And so until we speak up and stand up against it, it's never gonna change.
What's your name?
Tim Sewell.
Okay, I don't know.
I'm in the paper, if you read the paper, you see what's going on with my child right now.
Oh, okay.
But, it's, there's a lot of lawsuits right now going on in school. There's a $1 million lawsuit for a whistleblower, first of the school year. I'm not gonna get into it, but, it's pretty intense. And there's so much evidence to put John Hill out, but they will not, because they work for John Hill. So until we as a public stand up to it, it's never gonna change. But we gotta stand up. I'm willing to stand up. I mean, y'all gotta be willing to stand up. That's more than one.
I have a question about the schools also, and that is, right now, we have a lot of kids, I don't know how many, but we do have kids that I know of that are being promoted at the end of the school year to the next level, because we don't have any summer programs, any summer school programs, any other ancillary programs for them to catch up with. So at the end of the school year, if just pick a number, a fourth grader fails in reading, they're still promoted, because we don't have any other option for them, because they passed everything else. What kind of solutions can we put in place and advocate for as a community? Like you said, there's a lot of people in this community with a lot of skills, to solve those kind of problems and to make sure those kids have options to catch up.
I mean, I think most of the people in here can remember summer school,
Mm-hmm.
right? Y'all remember? I mean, we had it in 2008 too, is if you failed a class or something, you went to summer school, and you would hear your teacher say, yeah, I'm not taking summer I'm not taking summer off like Miss Jackson is, because I'm gonna earn some extra money, because I'm gonna work through the summer. So I'm absolutely supportive of implementing that for children who may be falling behind. But just summer programs in general, I spoke to a family last week that talked about summer programs and us having so much funding for all these extra activities and buildings and stuff, is we could potentially do summer programs at the school. And so I'm really open to all of that, and I'm supportive of it as a mom of young children as well. I have one that's on an IEP right now, so she struggles and is a little bit slower academically than my other children. And honestly, I don't want her to be pushed through the school system. I want her to be able to learn and absorb. And if that means she needs to be held behind a year, it's my job as a parent to do that. You know, I'm not somebody who's like, oh, she's gotta go to this next class or she's a failure. I'd rather them learn now in elementary school or primary school, even middle school, honestly. then go to high school or college. You know, you can get them through high school and you can have Hope scholarships and you can have, but once those kids get to college, that's where the real test comes in. Are they able to do, or if they go to another field, are you able to be successful? So yes, answering your question, I'm very supportive of those initiatives. And I do think as a community, we can discuss, bring parents, teachers, board, superintendent, bring everybody together and say, hey, this is a need for our community. Let's work on it.
There's another aspect to that service school business I experienced as a teacher. And that is that those teachers who are truly conscientious and work very hard to get the kids in their classes, even though they may come in at 8th grade, at 3rd grade reading level, but they've got to be ready to go to 9th grade. You work hard to bring those children up, but there are always those few who, no matter what you do and no matter how hard you're trying to help them and work with them, will play the system. They would rather mess around in class, and then they'll go to summer school because they know they can go up there 3 or 4 weeks, have a lot of fun, and they're gonna go to the next class. They're gonna get moved up anyway.
No, that's a great point, right? This is a point somebody brought up a couple of weeks is, as an educator, they have been, an educator retired now, is not every kid is teachable. And that's a reality, right? We have to have a rate of failure that exists in everywhere. And as, everybody has a part to play, as a teacher, as an administration, as a parent, we all play our unique parts to make sure a child is successful.
And the child has a part to play.
Absolutely, absolutely. Especially as they get older, the responsibility really kind of falls on them as they're going into adulthood. My husband grew up in an incredibly challenging, divorced parents, foster care, foster care, got in a lot of trouble as a kid. And he shares those perspectives. He's like, no teacher could teach me. I was unteachable. I was not going to sit in a seat and listen to anybody. And so I understand that we're going to have unique cases, and as we can provide resources and we can do our best, but be prepared that there's going to be a failure rate there.
So I got a question on that one since you brought him up. Not on him, but on the AEP situation. So stating what you just said about your husband's childhood and stuff like that, some of the kids that are pushed into the AEP program, they don't look no further than what the kid has done right there. How can the school system change that to find out what's going on with that child instead of just here, we're gonna throw you out like trash down to somewhere that they treat you like you're a prisoner. Or they did. I don't think they do it anymore. I know when Mr. Hill was in there, they treated him like crap.
So a couple of concerns that again, I started my campaigning from the moment I qualified. One was AP is kind of used to put kids that will bring the graduation rates lower, or you can exclude them that way. I've also heard from former students who were in AAP programs with very horrific stories. Believe it or not, I anonymously, I took their names off and any personal information, and I sent those emails to the board 2 years ago. I, of course, never received a response. But I want to look into the AEP, the policies they follow, what are the different levels that push a child. Is it strike one, no, and you are in? Who decides that? Like, there needs to be a process. I'm all about documenting, having a thorough process, having parent involvement, and then it makes sense too. But I'm not one for one person making that decision and putting AEP.
Alternative
I thought AP was advanced placement.
Yes. No, you would be right.
Some of them needed to, but anyway.
Yeah, so that's a program that is on my agenda to study. Again, our current board and our current website gives you very limited information. And I'm going off of my research that I was able to do and the feedback that I'm getting from the community. And that's all I can discuss, so we'll see what other things look like.
In today's environment, with the focus on alternative educational paths, trades, is that not something that kids are counseled, if they really are at a point where they're not either willing to learn, or can't learn, is there not a path in that direction that they're coached into? It sounds like, you know, it's either, perform and add to our statistics and get out, or you're pushed into something that's not really a pathway to some level of ability to enter the workforce when you finish high school. And so it seems to me as though there's gotta be a little bit more
There's
of a focus
opportunity,
and understanding and coaching. I
Mhm.
know our oldest granddaughter was probably the least prepared child that ever was accepted into college. And I was horrified because I just didn't know how she'd get through it. But she selected a college that was designed to help children to get placed into a direction that would be successful for them and what she wanted to do. And within that first year, she was coached into a very different path. She had a job within 2 months after graduating. She's had 2 promotions, and she's less than a year away from her master's degree.
That's wonderful.
So kids can be successful, but it takes everyone working together and directing them appropriately.
No, I mean, one size doesn't fit all, right? So we need to have those unique, just like the IEP program. Part of the reason schools will really have to do it because it's federally mandated. You have to provide these services.
Right.
But we should be doing that regardless, right? Same thing with now, if my husband kind of figured his life out, right, on his own practically. But I do think that he had so many skills, which he's now figured out in his 30s, that he's able to, that could have been done a decade and a half earlier.
Started much earlier.
Yes, and you never forget those teachers and educators and people that find those unique paths for you. I mean, I remember I grew up in a home that spoke 3 different languages, and both of my parents came from different states, and then I, was mostly speaking English. So I remember when my English scores dropped, my dad banned speaking any other language in the house. He said it's only English. And my teacher allowed me to rewrite an essay 5 times. She said, you're gonna write it until you pass that. And I was like, okay, and that's what you wanna do. You don't wanna just put an F if a child is willing to do the work.
Well, and when you look at the funding that does exist in Union County for schools and education, not a child should ever leave the school system without being prepared for life.
I agree with you, 100%. We have all, as I've said that multiple times, we have all the resources to be far more successful. And if we keep telling ourselves we're great, just imagine if you told that to a child the whole time. You're great, you're fantastic, you're amazing, nothing's wrong with you, you're gonna be a genius when you grow up. Come on, it doesn't work. It doesn't work with adults if you wanna motivate them, it doesn't work with children. So we need to be willing to ask the hard questions, is where can we improve? And we
need to put our money in really preparing children for that.
Absolutely.
And we need to speak, we need to have some kind of way to screen teachers, to encourage teachers, so that when students come into their classrooms, no matter who they are, what part of the community they're from, what their socioeconomic background is, any of these things, they do not, at that point, start telling you and saying to each other, don't bother with that child. That child these children are our future. I had a teacher tell me this, said, don't worry with these children over here, these are our future. And that is absolutely wrong, absolutely
And I
wrong.
definitely believe that happens in Union.
I think it happens in a lot of places. This wasn't Union County that I was in. I think that's what's happened to us in a lot of places.
Yeah, I agree with you. I 100% agree that when a child enters a school system, they're there to educate, and we need to treat every child with dignity and respect and equality.
That's right.
And that starts top down. Really, we cannot say you're from here, you're not from here, you're this way or your family's this way. We need to make sure they're here to get an education, let's give them that across the board. And you know, our motto is success for all. We need to live by that.
That's right.
Me and her was told last week at the board meeting, we were sitting there talking about the school system and the scores and stuff, and somebody was sitting right next to us, said, y'all need to just move out here if you don't like our school system. It was John Hill's mother. You know,
If you're elected, will you do both a forensic study and a future study on, have test score, because they're going to say, oh, we're in the top, whatever, in the Pioneer RISA, cohort and in the state. Will you do a study, both, like I say, to back and forward, to show that actual test scores are improving?
From what I
Instead of comparing test scores with other people, do the work to show, are the test scores actually improving overall?
Correct me if we're wrong, didn't they talk about that at the board meeting, that we're not able to do that?
Why not?
And they was,
We're not allowed
just talking to all of our schools, if you really look into, we're way behind, but up there, we're so far ahead, and they compare everything to everywhere else.
Well,
And that's what they do, and that's how they have their numbers.
Well, it's a word salad, right? It's a word salad that confuses you, and it makes it appear as if you don't understand how things work. And an insult to intelligent people, you know. But data is there, maybe it's 2 years behind, but data is available federally. You can look it up. And what we don't need is screenshots. What we don't need is this highlight, right? So I mentioned it in one of my campaign messages is, we were second in RISA for 3rd grade math. Okay, great. But how are we overall? How are we measuring all the other scores?
And did those test scores from 10 years ago improve now, or have they gone down?
Academically, we are down, absolutely. Down statewide, nationwide, and I believe Union County as well.
But forget state and nationally.
And
We're worried
Union
about
County
this county and this county only.
No, overall, no, we're, as far as I understand, we're not improving.
Positions for teachers. We're paying them $89,000 a year to do a position. I believe teachers should get paid good money. My wife's a teacher. She don't make a lot of money. She works in North Carolina. But teachers should make good money. You should get a teacher 20, 30 years, you should be making good money. You go to school for 4 years, 6 years, 8 years to teach these kids, and they're bigger than a daycare. And they're teaching our kids the future of our nation, and they should make good money. But when you're making positions for teachers in our school system that go sit in the library for all day to sit there and twiddle your thumb, when you should be in the classroom teaching the kids. Shouldn't happen.
Specialty positions.
We've got too many specialty positions, too many people run the show, and we're paying too much money for too many people to sit there and do nothing.
And it might be that would change if we changed to our state school superintendent.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if y'all heard Mr. Trammell, he was very impressive. But my neighbor works at Forsyth County, same thing, he says they call it the coffee shop on the top floor, where all these specialty people go and get good salaries.
We're paying for it.
Teacher salaries are set by the state,
Yeah.
based on the years of experience and all that. So that needs to change at the state level. So Mr. Trammell has promised that's something he would be willing to work for. That's a candidate that's pretty on top of the list for me, from what I've heard, observed so far. As far as all the other positions, there needs to be a heavy auditing on what's needed and what's not needed. There's also positions that very conveniently move to the top right before retirement. And that's a concern. I mean, I've heard countless times. So we need to know what is our need and what positions are we just 150, 100,000, 109, 110. Those are not small salaries. Those are huge salaries. And then we're talking about pensions on those, right? So, yes, that's something I hear loud and clear. And finances are on top of my list as well.
What do you think about the change subjects for the sheriff's department and the school since we got a regular county sheriff's department, now we got a school sheriff's department.
I don't wanna go too personal on, individuals or anything like that. But I do believe in accountability and a fair review process, right? So when one entity ends up having too much control, that can compromise that. So you need to have those checks and balances. And I do believe that we have a good sheriff's department, and in order to make sure that, let's just say a child has gotten in trouble, one person or two people in the school system shouldn't be deciding the whole course of that process. If you have outside law enforcement coming in, they can probably make a more independent decision than somebody within the school system. So I want our schools to be safe. I want to make sure we have safety at the top of our list, because I believe that's the counter argument to that. But at the same time, I do believe we compromise some of that checks and balances and accountability when it comes to.
Yeah, because you have one of my questions is there delineation between school discipline and school police? Well, what is the delineation
Right,
between
and
those two?
I don't.
Apparently that's gray in our school.
Huh?
Apparently that's gray in our school, that line.
Well, that should be a
The-
defined
the-
line.
And that's,
The cops, they do this one. Ask me how I know. I do know from personal experience. But what I was getting to on that is financially, we're paying for two sheriff's departments in our county because they're both public.
Yeah.
So we're paying for, our school is in session for 10 months out of the year. If you take away all the spring break, Christmas, you're in school probably about 9 months out of the year. Maybe less than that.
6
So-
months.
So they're getting a car to drive for 12 months. And they're driving them everywhere, because you see them, even during the summer, you see school police cars going up and down the road. They're making from just, I'm not 100% sure, but at least about 70,000 a piece a year.
They make more than the sheriff's department.
Yes.
Double.
And so, and we
Almost
got,
double.
and the one that whistleblowed, his position got filled by John Hill's girlfriend's brother.
Oh.
So, I mean, this is true stuff. But what I'm talking about, our kids need the most safety as they can get. I mean, we need to be safe. There's crazy people out there. We know that. But do we need to pay for another sheriff's department? We got our own sheriff's department. That whenever school's out or have breaks, them same cops are still working, not getting a break with the teachers and with the students.
So we're thinking of a resource officer model with the county doing the sheriff, which is what is commonly done across the board.
Yes.
You have one officer still per school, like you do right now.
I've got a question. Has Union County ever qualified for either Blue Ribbon schools or schools to watch under federal programs?
Not to my knowledge. We do have some Newsweek posters.
US News.
US News, yes.
So I got a question for this one. On sex crimes against children or women. Since you said the plea is up to, they do their plea and it's totally up to you at the end. If it's a lenient sentence to a sex crime, especially towards children, would you be for that, or would you be wanting to max on that? Or can you say?
Ethically, I can't say how I would rule on any, and what my outcomes and projections of how I would rule in various cases and crimes would be.
But I mean, because we have quite a lot of sex offenders in Union County. It's really sickening for as small a county as it is, the sex offenders that we have.
And we have a lot of drugs.
Yes. Well, the reason I asked that, there's an attorney that I just watched online sexually abusing a child, and he got 60 days in the county jail.
Is this local?
No, it wasn't local.
Oh.
It wasn't local, but the plea was 30 days in the jail, and the judge says no and doubled the sentence. Whoopity do, So they should have hung him, but whatever.
I think we talked about how our educators should be focused on preparing children for life. avoiding the courts, but when they happen to make a mistake and get into the courts, we clearly want education in that sense too. And that may mean it's a harsher punishment rather than a lesser punishment for a child or a young person who needs to learn a lesson. And I think there's a balance there, even in terms of the better job we do in the schools, the less they're probably going to be in front of police.
Sure, yeah, absolutely, and what I can say, and I kind of touched on it with, the question earlier about, the plea process and sentencing repeat offenders and that sort of questioning. Safety and security, I take very seriously, and it's not just professional, it's personal. So I can say that, but again, as a judge, you have to apply the law and, again, listen to everything that's presented to you. Ask questions because of how important the sentencing process or any case is. You know, which parent gets to spend more time with their children? How long is someone going to spend in jail? Should this deed be changed to give someone more rights than they have now? All of those different areas that affect the well-being, safety, and happiness of our community is extremely important to me. And I think it's so important to listen to everything that's presented and ask questions to get the most information needed to make those informed decisions.
So since we're such what do you know about Woody Gap, and where does it fit in with the long term for the whole school district? You hear rumors back and forth about its viability, not viable. What do you know, and what's your own? Do you have an opinion?
I will be honest with you, I don't have an opinion as of right now. I believe there's, again, very limited information that was available to me when I look at, what my resources were when it comes to Woody Gap. Regular resources run 2 or 3 years behind for the school system. Woody Gap is like, I hope it's not, but it's like a stepchild on the side that nobody cares about almost.
Well, in some of the rankings, it says Woody Gap not ranked.
Yes,
It
absolutely.
literally.
Because the sample size is so low. I mean,
Is
last
that
year
it?
we had how many graduates?
Mhm.
One. So we have.
Wow. Yes.
So I'm not being.
So, it's just like the law enforcement and other, what does financially make sense and what's the need of the community and what the community wants. My input in this position will always be listening to people and getting their feedback. I don't wanna make any decision or vote on anything where I'm not hearing, So I do believe that's something I would like to explore further on where it falls financially and what are we getting out of it.
Well, if Woody Gap has 5 out of 5 going to college, we need them in the Union County rankings. Because according to US News, 8.5% of our students are college ready.
Oh, you're kidding, that low?
8.5%.
So we are, when we were there last board meeting, didn't they have a new principal?
So they got a new principal for Woody Gap that was a prior superintendent. So that tells you.
Wendy's leaving?
Who?
Wendy is leaving?
I guess because they hired one of John Hill's buddies to come be the principal up here.
I wanna know what
He's
that
in the
salary
paper. He's
is
in the
also,
paper
how
on the
much are we
board.
paying this person?
Yeah, how much you pay?
If
He
it
was
makes sense.
superintendent somewhere. His wife's a teacher too, right?
Yes.
So how much they pay in the principal that was a superintendent? So that's more of a tax. Not if you're making more money.
I agree.
Not if you're still drawing
Yeah,
retirement
I'll ask
and.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, make a comment first of all. When my husband and I moved here in 1979, Woody Gap had 180 students. And we had an excellent record. It was a top-notch school for years, and now it is not. But that's not what I want to ask you about. I want to ask you about the discipline. Teachers must be able to discipline their children in a classroom. And what are your thoughts on classroom discipline? You can't have a class that's 10 kids, maybe 4 kids, maybe 2, or 25 or 30 kids. You can't teach if you cannot discipline when you absolutely have to. And there are those children that will push and push and push and push and push until a teacher will discipline them. So what are you thinking?
No,
What's your thinking?
I'm all for constructive discipline that can be implemented in the classroom. And I think if a kid is being a problem and affecting the education of all other children, then we need to have other options available as well. So one child should not be the reason we have 20 others struggling, or the teacher's not able to teach that classroom. So it all comes back to, okay, the resources, we have one teacher, we have to teach 20 kids, and if this one child is we're not, we can explore other options. But I'm not opposed to teacher disciplining the kids at all.
The thing is now, our kids, and a lot of it comes from the drug parents. The parents are taking drugs when these kids are born. You've got everything in the classroom from ADHD to autism and everything in between. And it's not these kids' fault that they're that way. And look at the parents, my parents when I was growing up. I came home, I got my homework, they were there. I mean, my mother didn't work. Now, so many have single parents. And I know when we were in South Florida, South Georgia, I'm sorry, there was kids that would literally spend the night under the bleachers, being expected to be in school the next morning. They would be in the back of those cars peddling drugs because the whole atmosphere of the kids we're teaching now has changed even in the last 10 years. So until we can push the parents and stuff, the teachers' hands are tied. They've got what, I don't know the average, usually it's around 23 kids. Yeah. How can you do that? Because I've got my sister's grandbaby. I mean, he was kicked out of kindergarten the first week. I mean, it's because he processes things differently. And so now they've worked and worked and worked. And during class, while the others are taking tests, he has to go outside because he cannot be still. We need magnet schools because a lot of these ADHD kids are some of the smartest kids out there, but they've got to be channeled in the right direction. Until that happens, they're going to continually be bored to death, sitting there.
The fellow she's talking about, you ask him anything about dinosaurs, he's better than any Google you ever find.
Oh, and he'll tell you the sex of a crowd.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy how smart this 7-year-old is.
Absolutely.
But we've got to have another alternative because an ADHD kid and an autistic kid are on two different spectrums completely all the way down the line.
But your parents if they do care. I coached sports for like 10 years. And you can tell the kids it's gonna be issues and what it's not. You can tell. You can tell what parents care, what parents don't care. And so we got parents don't care, what's happening to their kids? They're not gonna care.
They send them to school to babysit because they're tired of them, they can't handle them at home.
But you also have kids who are over aggressive or whatever, you need to parent and go, okay, I know where that comes from.
Right.
But you got to, parents, like, I got son that's got ADHD, and my wife, like I said, she's a teacher, so she's been on it since he was little. I mean, she's, so parents has got to keep up with it and not let the school system say, we're taking care of it. You gotta make sure that your kids got the proper teachers in the classroom, make sure they get the proper help. Because like my youngest son, he struggles so bad when it comes to mathematics.
And then he turns it inward on himself because he can't do it.
Well, he's actually now in high school and he's actually doing better than he's did ever, because my wife stays on it. And if parents stays on
You've
it,
got a good wife.
we gotta stay on it. You gotta care about your child's education and you gotta go
But
to
so
school.
many don't, Tim, so many don't.
Oh, no.
But I agree, in elementary school, that kindergarten to first grade, I mean, they held our grandson back, and I was one of the main ones that talked to him and said, hey, he was not mature. If they can hold him back then, he's in 6th grade now, straight A student. And I mean, just the happiest kid in the world. Whereas if they had not done that, he would have struggled the whole way.
Right.
So the
Early intervention helps.
But the parents, a lot of parents think it's a failure for their kid to be put back, that they need to be better educated at that grade level of kindergarten and first grade.
I've got a question. Wouldn't the, IEP cover the ADHD? And are we saying that our teachers are not trained well enough to handle it within the classroom? Because I was an ADHD, it wasn't called back then, and there were certain
just
behaviors. No, I was hyperactive,
No,
but I was diagnosed.
But that's what I said, do,
Yeah.
that did it.
But I was diagnosed, I was officially diagnosed.
That depends on the teachers
And,
that you have.
but, I mean, no, but there were behaviors that I was taught in a separate classroom to do when, you know, all of a sudden I wanted to whirly around the classroom. And is
So
that
there's
happening?
very limited information. I'll speak from my personal experience with my child who is diagnosed ADHD. She's very high functioning, you can tell, you know, but she struggles with learning. And from what I have is they're pulled out of classroom for only certain time. So it's 30 minutes or 40 minutes windows. And that happens maybe based on their level that they're on. So they go drop down or go up as needed. So she started at like every single day, you know, 30 minutes, 40 minutes of one-on-one instructions or a very small group, 2 or 3 students. I have to say I was very pleased with those results. And the IEP teachers were meeting me regularly, giving me input, I was reading stuff. And then our regular meetings as she moved along were, then she went to 3 days. She went to 2, and then eventually she came out with an IEP.
Bad aunt.
Regular classroom.
That's a bad aunt.
I don't have 4 bedtimes, I mean, you need to take them with you. So yes, I believe this is how they handle it right now, but again, my child's situation may be different. We may have more severe cases where the child is in a completely different classroom the whole day. I can expect that to be the case. I met one family that have a child on wheelchair and is blind and deaf. So my understanding is that child is not in a regular classroom, but a special needs classroom all day. So I'm not sure how that would work. And again, also the confidentiality around
Yes.
disability and, you know, 504 plans. I don't blame that schools are not able to share that. That's
No,
just-
but I mean, usually even if the school can't share for an individual, they can
Right.
say, this is our policy.
Yes.
This is what, parent, you're having this problem, come see us. This is our policy, this is what we can do for you.
We do have very good policies written and published. Followed, I'm not sure.
Not always.
Not always.
My
Followed.
son in middle school got way behind. And my wife, she was like, she went up there and you gotta stay on. You gotta stay on, let things kinda, we're getting paid good money, the school has federal funding for that, you know, a lot so.
Alright,
Mhm.
any other questions for me?
This has been
When
very
is that
helpful
school?
to provide.
Excellent, yes.
Well, you know, when they shut up.
Yay, we are so happy.
Yeah, thank you for
Yeah.
coming.
I was talking about
Oh,
work.
no, I know what you meant, I know what you meant.
Watch me get a traffic ticket and she's
like, yeah, I remember you.
She has to keep her personal out of that though.
Yeah, I know.